The Tesla Model S is a luxury car that goes fast, browses the internet, and makes everybody want to be your friend. Sound as unrealistic as the transmogrifier from Calvin and Hobbes? It isn't. And if you can afford the coin, now is probably the perfect time to cash in on some of that new car appeal. Pricing starts just over $71,000, and that gives you the smaller battery pack of the two, which is good according to the EPA for up to 208 miles of driving. Then there's a model with a larger 85 kilowatt-hour battery pack. That tacks on an extra $10,000 to the base price and boosts the maximum range to 265 miles. Mind you, the model we have is the P85 Performance model, and it hits 0 to 60 in only 4.2 seconds. Its base price is also $91,070 before any other options. Of course, this is an electric car, which means that there's nothing under the hood. All you get is what Tesla calls a frunk. All the car's guts are located underneath the car and in between the rear wheels, which is where all the power is sent. Now you might be thinking to yourself, my gosh, this is an expensive electric car, and you'd be right. The Tesla Model S is no cheap machine. It's priced to compete with high-end German luxury, and the body styling does a splendid job of doing exactly that. The body is an amalgamation of smooth aerodynamics and powerful muscle. Pictures just don't do it justice, and you don't get a sense of how imposing this car is until you see it in a parking space. In terms of length, it sits right in between a Mercedes E and S-Class, but the width is what really gives it its presence. At 77.3 inches without counting the mirrors, the Model S has quite a stance. And finally, I've got to mention the door handles. When you're driving, they take that shaved look, but when you walk up to the car, they pop out to greet you. For a car that runs past the six-figure mark, the Tesla Model S has remarkably few buttons in the cabin. Other cars it's priced near are littered with knobs and dials and all sorts of things that manufacture migraines. In this case, it's refreshingly simple. You get this 17-inch touchscreen, and it's mind-boggling how other manufacturers haven't picked up on how well this works. It feels like you're using a modern tablet. You have access to the internet. You can browse. You can do everything. You have Google Maps. It's nuts that this isn't in other cars. I just can't imagine how it's so easy for a company like Tesla and so hard for much, much larger manufacturers. But it isn't just technology that you can control through the touchscreen. Everything from the locks to the heating and air conditioning and even the sunroof down to a single degree of opening or closing is available through the touchscreen. As I said before, our car is very generously optioned. Some of those options include carbon fiber inlays in the dashboard and down here in the absence of a center console, Alcantara inserts on the seats and in the headliner, and of course this Napa leather lining on the dashboard. But I do have a couple of minor complaints. For example, you get this little cubby storage space underneath the screen, and it feels kind of flimsy and plasticky, and also the dashboard we found, it just doesn't feel all that solid. You have to expect for a company this small with such few vehicles in production that the early models are going to be a little bit quirky and some things might not quite fit well. Most of the owners that you'll talk to will find that they're very satisfied with their vehicles, and if anything's wrong, Tesla has so far been more than happy to take care of it free of charge. As you'd expect, second row seat is very generous and you won't find yourself bumping knees up against the front buckets. One of the biggest advantages to an electric car is that you get all of the torque as soon as you touch the accelerator. And of course, the Model S is a rear-wheel drive vehicle, so those two things combined mean that you have unbelievable acceleration right off the line. You step on the gas and you just go. You feel like you're being blown by a strong wind down the road. It's amazing. You also get 3 steering modes: comfort, normal, and sport. Comfort, in my opinion, is too light for comfort, ironically enough. And normal mode is fine for driving around town, but sport is really where you want to be on highways or during any sort of sporty, speedy driving, because the wheel gets this really dense, tight feeling, and it just feels a lot heavier, as you would expect. Tesla says the car will go from 0 to 60 in only 4.2 seconds, and it's hard to find any fault with that claim. It is worthwhile to point out, though, that that's specific to the performance model that we have and that lesser models don't go quite that quickly. Another thing that's really worth noting is that the severe slant of the rear window means that it's very, very difficult to see out the back. Thankfully, what you do have is a camera that gives you a wide-angle view of the rear, and it gives you a clear picture of where you are, so the rear visibility really isn't an issue at all. You also can access it whenever you want, so you can be driving along, push a couple of buttons, and voila, you can see right behind the car. It's a really handy feature. Now, like I said before, this car is sized lengthwise right in between a Mercedes E and S class, but widthwise it's quite a bit bigger. So that raises a question. Does this car feel big to drive? It doesn't. Surprisingly enough, you know, the good visibility out of the front, relatively large side mirrors, and the lightness that you get out of the strong feeling of acceleration really all combine to make the car feel quite a bit smaller than it actually is. You're supposed to be able to drive up to 265 miles in this car's battery. And there have been some theories about whether or not that's really possible, but to be honest with you, it's completely irrelevant because this has the biggest battery of any electric car on the market. And that's going to grant you one very important thing: the ability to go through daily driving situations almost guaranteed without problems. With intuitive controls, impressive performance, and a future that just seems to get brighter and brighter for the company that builds it, the Model S transcends most of the major boundaries that are holding other electric cars back. For that reason, if it's within your price range, you should really give serious consideration to a Tesla Model S.